In my book, recently published, Letters to a Young Scientist, I have dedicated these pages, which are a guidebook to young people wanting to go into science, to my two mentors. And they are the kinds of people that I believe most naturalists especially would find inspiring. The first one was Ralph Shermock at the University of Alabama, where I was a freshman. And Shermock took me under his wing. He saw I had promise, but he saw that I needed a lot of, not urging, but restraint. And so he came down hard on me continuously. And he would tell me and other young students who wanted to go into scientific naturalism and entomology, we had a fine group there of recently returned World War II veterans when I was there, who came from various parts of the country and wanted to study and knew about Shermock, himself only about 30 years old. And he would say things like, "You're not a naturalist until you know the names of 10,000 species." Well, that inspired me. I started memorizing. I don't think I ever got past 1,000. At any rate, then when I finally proudly presented him with a paper showing for the first time using the cafeteria, and I was an 18-year-old kid, showing the invention of the cafeteria method, where you concentrate by dry Berlese funneling leaf litter arthropods, and then you allow colonies to go out and search and pick the ones they want to use as prey. So I proudly presented him with this paper in which I showed for the first time that these kind of small dacetine ants, which are abundant everywhere in the world, at least the species there, prefer collembolans, springtails, and a few other soft-bodied tiny arthropods, and that they use ultra slow, cautious stalking with sensitive hairs and trap jaws to catch them. So I had all that described for a paper that was published in the Annals, in the Entomological News, and then in another entomological journal. And I proudly presented as an 18-year-old to Shermock, who looked at it and then called me in. He says, "You can't publish this paper." I know now he was only half serious. He said, "You haven't found a colony catching collembolans and feeding it to its larvae in the field." Well, my goodness, even, in those days, that was like finding, I don't know, a new particle. It was so difficult. It was just hard to find a colony of these darn things. And, but out I went and looked everywhere, found colony after colony, but you have to catch them within just an hour or two after small colonies, after they've brought in prey. One is brought in a collembolan because it's eaten up very fast. Until finally, I opened a little piece of rotting log, and there was the colony, and there were the larvae, and there was a entomobryomorph collembolan being chomped on by a larva. Ant larva. So back I went to Shermock, and I said, "I've got one." And he said, "Okay, you can send it in." I needed that kind of guidance. The other person who was my mentor was William Brown, Bill Brown, Uncle Bill. He was a graduate student at Harvard, a fanatic on ants, and he quickly got hold of me when he learned I was working on ants down in Alabama. He was working on these dacetine ants, and so even at 18, he was writing me, and he wrote me as an adult. He said, "Wilson, you are in a place where the dacetine ants are poorly known. I suggest that you forget about your big project, which is a paper on all the ants of Alabama, and get serious. And then find out about all of the dacetine ants, and as much as you can about them, and send the specimens to me, and let's work on them together." And what he said in effect was, "I hereby assign you The dacetine ants of the southeastern United States get busy. Well, I'm persuaded to this day that part of good science teaching is to empower the young that way, to give them a sense of proprietorship, and to tell them at the earliest possible day in their development, I'm assigning you this. Take care of it, do it. Anyway, these were the two people who inspired me. I guess you might say they inspired me in part by kicking me in the butt.